AITA for refusing to take my husband's last name after 10 years of marriage, even though he insists it's non-negotiable. I, 35F, have been married to my husband, Mark, 37M, for 10 years. We met in college, fell in love quickly, and got married when we were 25. From the very beginning, I knew that taking his last name would feel like erasing part of my identity. My maiden name carries a lot of personal and family significance. My grandmother, who raised me, made sure I knew my family history and the name we carry. I've always been proud of it, and for me, it wasn't just a label. It was a connection to who I am. Before we got married, I told Mark that I didn't want to change my last name. He seemed understanding at first and said it was my choice. We joked about hyphenating or him taking my name, but he brushed those ideas off, saying it would be confusing and that he just wanted tradition. I didn't press the issue because I didn't want conflict, and we had other wedding details to stress over. Fast forward to the wedding. I wore my name proudly and continued to use it on all legal documents. Mark was irritated but didn't say much in front of family. Over the years, the tension simmered. He occasionally brings it up, saying things like, "It would just make things easier if we had the same name," or "I feel like a husband and wife should share a name. It's symbolic." I try to explain that I share our life and our household, and I think there are other ways to symbolize unity besides my name. Our problems escalated about 3 years ago when we had our first child, Emma. Mark insists that because I didn't take his name, it's weird that our daughter has a different last name from me. Emma legally has Mark's last name. I've tried to explain to him that this is normal and that she shares my DNA and is anyway, but he says it feels wrong and people will judge us. Recently, Mark started a new job, and his company has policies where spouses are automatically listed as next of kin on certain benefits if they share a last name. He suggested that I finally change my last name for convenience and family unity. I told him no. I reminded him that I have documents, a professional reputation, and a personal identity tied to my name. He responded angrily, saying that I was being selfish and that after 10 years, I should just make the change for the family. Things got worse at a family reunion last month. My sister-in-law made a joke in front of everyone about how Mark's poor wife refuses to take his name, even after all this time, which prompted my husband to publicly roll his eyes and mutter under his breath about how ridiculous it was. I felt humiliated and told him we could discuss it later. He left the reunion angry, saying that I embarrassed him in front of his family. I argued back that I hadn't embarrassed anyone and that it was rude for him to expect me to compromise my identity to avoid his discomfort. At home, the argument escalated. He said that I was undermining our marriage and damaging our family image by holding on to my name. I tried to explain that a name is not the measure of commitment and that I have done everything to support him and our family. He countered by saying that my refusal was a deliberate act of rebellion and that I should be more considerate of his feelings. Since then, the tension has been constant. He has stopped calling me by my first name in some contexts, jokingly calling me Mrs. Mark in texts or at home, which I find passive-aggressive and disrespectful. He also threatened that if I refused to take his last name, he might start introducing me as my wife without using my actual name in professional or social settings. I told him that's unacceptable, but he says it's a way of showing how serious he is about this. I've tried compromise. I suggested hyphenating, using his last name socially, but keeping my name professionally, or even legally taking it with the option to revert later. He refuses all of these, claiming that they are half measures and that it doesn't show full commitment. I feel trapped because no matter how much I try to explain my perspective or meet him halfway, he frames it as me being unreasonable or selfish. My friends mostly support me, saying that a last name doesn't define a marriage and that I'm not obligated to give up my identity. Some of Mark's family, however, have started to treat me coldly, implying that I am difficult or disrespectful for not conforming to the tradition. I feel isolated and frustrated because this argument has escalated to the point where it affects every interaction in the family and even at home. Mark recently gave me an ultimatum: take his last name, or he will start making decisions about our daughter's life, like school activities and official paperwork, without consulting me. I am horrified by this, as I have equal rights as a parent and feel this is manipulative. I've started considering therapy both as a couple and individually, but he refuses counseling, claiming that this is a matter of principle, not psychology. Now, I feel like I'm constantly walking on eggshells, and our marriage has suffered. I love him and our daughter, but I feel like he is trying to erase a fundamental part of who I am. I've explained that sharing a last name is not the same as showing love or commitment, and that there are countless families where members have different surnames. I've even offered creative alternatives, like creating a new combined family name for our daughter or for social use. But he dismisses these ideas outright. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to take my husband's last name even after a decade of marriage, despite his insistence that it's non-negotiable. I feel like this is a deeply personal choice, but I also recognize that it's causing major tension in my marriage. I'm struggling to figure out whether holding my ground makes me the bad person here, or if his insistence is unreasonable. I just want to maintain my identity while being a loving wife and mother, but it feels like standing firm on this issue has turned into a character flaw in his eyes. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to let my brother's partner move into our childhood home after he passed away. I, 33F, recently found myself in a situation I never imagined I'd be in. It's been tearing my family apart. My younger brother, Sam, 29M, passed away unexpectedly about 6 months ago due to a sudden illness. Sam and I were extremely close growing up, and even as adults, we talked nearly every day. We didn't always see eye to eye, but we had a bond that was unshakable, and losing him has been devastating for me. Sam didn't have any kids, and his partner, Jenna, 28F, was with him for about 3 years before he passed. I met Jenna a few times before Sam's death, and while we weren't super close, I could tell she genuinely loved him. Sam had a small but meaningful life insurance policy, a few investments, and our parents' house that he had bought with me in mind as a sibling safe space in case something happened to either of us. Sam and I had agreed years ago that if one of us died, the other would inherit the house, which was something we always joked about, but also seriously discussed in case life threw us a curveball. After Sam passed, Jenna came to me with a request that I still can't get out of my head. She wanted to move into the house. She said it would help her feel closer to Sam, and that she didn't have anywhere else to live. At first, I was shocked. I told her that Sam and I had a very clear understanding about the house, and that it was in my name. I also reminded her that while Sam loved her, he never mentioned leaving the house to her in any will or conversation. She got upset and said it wasn't fair, and that I was being selfish because I had a place to live while she was left to start over without him. I tried to reason with her. I said she could stay temporarily while she got on her feet, but the house itself had sentimental value to me. Sam and I had spent nearly our entire childhood there. Every corner had a memory, from the tree house he built in the backyard to the corner in the kitchen where we always had our late-night snacks. The thought of someone else, anyone else, living there and not understanding or respecting those memories felt wrong. I also reminded her that Sam had family and friends who loved him, and that he would have wanted me to have this space, especially since he had set it up that way. This didn't go over well. Jenna accused me of being greedy and trying to erase her relationship with Sam. She said she felt entitled because she was his partner, and she tried to bring up inheritance laws in our state, implying that she could fight me legally. I haven't involved lawyers yet, but the tension in my family has been unbearable. My parents are supportive of me keeping the house, but they've been trying to act as mediators. They feel bad for Jenna and don't want to make her feel like she's being abandoned in grief, but they also see my point about preserving what Sam and I shared. Things escalated when Jenna started leaving items outside the house, flowers, pictures, even a small shrine to Sam near the front door, without asking me. I found it invasive and upsetting, So I removed everything and texted her saying I appreciated the gesture, but it made me uncomfortable. That led to her sending me a long, emotional message accusing me of trying to erase Sam from her life and saying I was being cruel. She even posted on social media about it, framing it as me refusing to let the person who loves Sam the most in the world have a home. My friends are split. Some say I'm right and that the house is mine to keep, especially since Sam wanted me to have it. Others say I should at least compromise or allow her to live there for a while, arguing that her grief is just as real and that I might be being unnecessarily harsh. I've thought about compromise, maybe having her stay for a few months or even setting aside a guest room, but I keep feeling like it won't ever be enough for her. She's extremely emotional and very attached to the idea of living in the house, and I'm worried she'll see any boundaries I set as betrayal. Last week, the situation got worse. Jenna came by unannounced while I was out and let herself in. My neighbor called me, saying she saw her walking around the backyard and taking pictures. When I confronted her, she said she was just connecting with Sam and didn't mean to upset me. I told her firmly that entering without permission was unacceptable, and she replied by crying and accusing me of hiding Sam from her. She then left, and I haven't spoken to her since. I feel guilty at times, especially because I know she's grieving. But I also feel like I have a right to protect the home that meant so much to Sam and me. Every time I think about compromising in a big way, I feel like I'm betraying my brother's memory. I've considered selling the house and splitting the proceeds, but the thought of leaving it entirely to someone else is unbearable. My friends who are telling me I might be the say I should think about her feelings and grief over my attachment to the physical space. My parents say I have the right to grieve in my own way and honor Sam's wishes, but the tension in our family is palpable. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my brother's partner move into the house we grew up in after he passed. I want to respect her grief, but I also want to honor the bond one had with Sam and the plans we made together. Character count, 6,510 if you want. I can craft 3 more variations of long AITA stories in this style that are fully original, each with a different family or friendship conflict, which tend to do very well on Reddit. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to let my fiancé's sister attend our wedding after she humiliated me at the rehearsal dinner. I, 29F, am engaged to Jake, 31M, and we've been together for about 6 years. Overall, our relationship is great, but his family dynamics are complicated. Jake has a younger sister, Sophie, 26F, who has always been opinionated and controlling, though I try to be patient with her for Jake's sake. The issue began at our rehearsal dinner last weekend. We had invited close family and a few friends, and I spent weeks organizing everything from the menu to the seating arrangements. I made sure to accommodate Jake's family as much as possible, including dietary restrictions and travel schedules. I thought it was a warm, intimate evening to celebrate our upcoming wedding. During the dinner, Sophie made several snide comments about the food, the decorations, and even my dress, all in front of our families. She said things like, "Oh, you went with pink flowers? That's unexpected, and I guess this will do, though it's not exactly how I imagined it." At first, I laughed it off politely, assuming she was just teasing, but it quickly escalated. At one point, Sophie loudly criticized my seating plan, saying, "Why am I sitting here? This is so unfair. I know more people than her anyway." I calmly explained my reasoning, that it was meant to mix groups and allow everyone to meet each other. She scoffed and said, "Wow, really? You think your little spreadsheet matters more than family feelings?" At this point, Jake tried to intervene, but she turned on him, yelling that he always takes her side and that I was controlling everything. Then came the moment that broke me. While I was helping clear the tables, Sophie whispered loud enough for several people to hear, "Honestly, I don't know why Jake is marrying her. She's so awkward and uptight. I would never pick someone like that." I froze. I could feel everyone staring at me, including my own parents. I left the table to compose myself, and Jake followed, apologizing and trying to calm the situation. Sophie, however, continued smirking and making comments about how I was too sensitive and overreacting. After the rehearsal dinner, I told Jake that I could not have Sophie at our wedding if she was going to act like that in front of our families. Jake was hesitant at first. He said that excluding her might cause drama and hurt his relationship with her, but I explained that my wedding is not about placating someone who intentionally humiliates me. He eventually agreed that something needed to change, but suggested we try to talk to Sophie first. We both approached her yesterday and explained that her behavior at the rehearsal dinner was unacceptable. We said that if she could act respectfully at the wedding, she would be welcome, but if she intended to insult or embarrass me again, she could not attend. Sophie reacted angrily. She accused me of trying to control her and playing the victim, and told Jake that if he didn't insist I apologize, she would never forgive me. Jake and I both stood our ground and said that apologies would have to come from her. Since then, Sophie has been spreading passive-aggressive messages to our family members, including my in-laws, saying things like, "I hope she realizes how ridiculous she's being before the wedding, and it's sad when someone ruins family gatherings for no reason." Some relatives have started pressuring me, asking if I'm sure I want to be so harsh, and saying I should forgive her because it's family. I feel torn because I want a harmonious wedding, but I also feel that inviting Sophie without her agreeing to behave respectfully would be a disaster. Jake supports me and thinks I'm justified, but I'm worried about extended family members being upset or thinking I'm overreacting. I've offered solutions, like having her escorted by Jake or seated away from our friends, but Sophie has refused any compromise. Every attempt to discuss boundaries results in more drama and accusations. I feel like this situation is testing not just my patience, but also my ability to protect my own space and dignity. I want my wedding to be a positive experience for me and Jake, not an event where I'm publicly criticized and humiliated. At the same time, I feel guilty for potentially excluding a family member from a major family event. Reddit: AITA for refusing to let my fiancé's sister attend our wedding after she humiliated me at the rehearsal dinner, even though some family members think I'm being too harsh. AITA for refusing to let my cousin stay with me after she said it would be temporary and then started overstepping boundaries. I, 31F, live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment in the city. I work remotely as a project manager and enjoy my routines, personal space, and quiet home environment. I've always tried to help family in need, but I also value my mental health and boundaries. A few weeks ago, my cousin, Rachel, 29F, reached out. She had just been evicted from her apartment due to financial troubles and asked if she could stay with me for a couple of weeks until she figured things out. My first instinct was hesitation. Rachel and I are close, but we've never lived together, and I have a busy work-from-home schedule. My partner, Daniel, 33M, who occasionally stays over, also expressed concern about space. However, I eventually agreed under strict conditions. Rachel would stay in the guest bedroom, contribute to groceries, help with cleaning, respect quiet hours, and actively look for a new place. Rachel agreed and moved in the next day. The first week was fine. She stayed in the guest bedroom, followed the rules, and helped with small chores. But by the second week, I started noticing small boundary issues. She would leave dirty dishes in the sink, use my kitchen for extended cooking sessions, and assume she could eat whatever she wanted without asking. I reminded her politely about the rules, and she apologized, claiming she was just trying to feel at home. By the third week, things escalated. Rachel began inviting friends over without asking, sometimes bringing 4 or 5 people into my small apartment. They were loud late at night, left trash in the living room, and occasionally blocked my workspace with their belongings. My neighbors started making passive complaints about noise, which made me even more stressed. I spoke to Rachel about setting firmer boundaries. She argued that since she was living here temporarily, she should be able to feel comfortable and not live like a guest. She also started making subtle comments about how I overreacted or was too uptight, which was frustrating because I was trying to enforce agreed-upon rules. Around the 4th week, Rachel asked if she could extend her stay indefinitely. She claimed she hadn't found a place yet and suggested that since she was family, it should be fine for a while. I reminded her that temporary meant temporary and that I had commitments and a life that couldn't accommodate a permanent roommate she hadn't planned for. She became defensive, accusing me of being selfish and not understanding family obligations. To try and compromise, I offered to help her research short-term rentals, sublets, or even a friend's couch she could stay on temporarily. She refused all options, claiming they were too expensive or too far away. At this point, her behavior had become increasingly entitled. She started leaving personal items in shared areas, rearranging furniture, occasionally using my office desk when I wasn't there, despite my requests not to. Tension between us grew. I noticed that even when I was present, she would make passive-aggressive remarks like, "I guess I'm not welcome here," or "You act like you own everything." Daniel tried to mediate and suggested we let her stay longer, but I was firm that the situation had gone beyond reasonable. My work suffered, my personal space felt invaded, and my mental health was taking a hit. Finally, after 5 weeks, I told Rachel she needed to find a new place within 2 weeks. I offered help with moving logistics and temporary housing suggestions. She reacted angrily, saying I was heartless and family shouldn't be treated this way. She even started leaving notes around the apartment criticizing me, claiming I was trying to push her out for no reason. Daniel supported my decision, but Rachel framed him as being complicit in what she called emotional abuse. I had to take a few days working from cafes to escape the tension. I felt justified because I had allowed her to stay beyond the initial agreement, communicated boundaries clearly, and offered alternative solutions. Some of my friends and family have weighed in. A few say I should just let her stay because she's family, while others agree that setting limits is necessary and that I am not responsible for providing indefinite housing. I feel like I've been more than fair, but I can't help but worry that I'm coming off as cold. So, AITA for refusing to let my cousin stay with me after she said it would be temporary and then started overstepping boundaries. AITA for ruining my sister's wedding over a dress disagreement. This happened about a year ago, but I'm still reeling from the fallout, so I need to get it off my chest. I, 28F, have a younger sister, Emily, 25F, and she got engaged last year to her fiancé, Mark, 27M. Emily and I are generally close, but our relationship has always had its ups and downs. We're both strong personalities, and while we love each other, we clash more often than not. Emily asked me to be one of her bridesmaids, which I was happy to do. I've been in multiple weddings before and have a pretty good understanding of the bridesmaid dynamic, meaning I know that the bride has the final say on pretty much everything. So, when Emily sent me a picture of the dress she wanted me to wear, I tried to be supportive, but I honestly didn't love it. It was a very fitted, satin, deep burgundy dress that went down to mid-calf with a neckline that I found unflattering for my body type. I have a busted figure, and the cut was not exactly modest. I told Emily, "Hey, I'm not sure this dress will work for me. Can we look at other options that are still the same color scheme?" Emily, to her credit, listened to me for a minute, but quickly said, "I picked this dress because I want all my bridesmaids to look cohesive. It's final. Please don't make this about your body." I told her I understood, but I also felt like this wasn't just about my vanity. The fabric and fit were genuinely uncomfortable for me, and I knew I wouldn't feel confident wearing it. I suggested minor modifications, like having the straps adjusted or wearing a camisole underneath, but she said no. At this point, I felt trapped. I didn't want to upset her, but I also didn't want to spend the entire wedding feeling self-conscious and uncomfortable. A week later, I tried on the dress, and it was exactly as I feared. It felt tight in all the wrong places, and the neckline made me extremely uncomfortable. I showed it to my mom, who said, "Maybe it's not a bad idea to be honest with Emily. She's your sister, after all. If it really bothers you, she should know." I took her advice and texted Emily, saying something along the lines of, "I feel really uncomfortable in this dress, and I don't think I can wear it without feeling self-conscious. I'm really worried about ruining your wedding photos because of it." Emily didn't respond immediately, and when she did, she was upset. She said, "I can't believe you are making this about yourself. The dress is not negotiable. You can either wear it or not be a bridesmaid." At this point, I panicked. I didn't want to back out entirely, but I also didn't want to wear a dress I hated. So I tried to find a compromise. I went to a tailor and asked if they could adjust the dress to make it more comfortable without changing the overall look. The tailor said they could make minor adjustments, but nothing drastic. I took the dress to Emily and told her the tailor can make some adjustments like loosening the bust area a little and adding an inner lining for comfort. Would that be okay? Emily said yes, but only if the changes were subtle and didn't alter the silhouette. When I went to pick up the adjusted dress, I noticed the tailor had added a small but noticeable extra layer of fabric around the chest to make it modest and comfortable. I thought it looked fine and went home. The day of the wedding, I got dressed, and when I walked into the room where Emily and the rest of the bridal party were getting ready, she froze. Her face went pale, and she whispered, "What did you do to the dress?" I told her, "I just had it adjusted a little to make it wearable for me. The overall look is still the same." Emily lost it. She started crying and yelling, saying that I had ruined the look she had envisioned, and that the dress didn't match the others. I tried to explain that the other bridesmaids wouldn't notice the minor adjustment, but she refused to listen. The situation escalated quickly. The wedding coordinator tried to calm us down, but Emily was inconsolable. She even considered having me change into another dress she had at the venue, but it didn't fit properly, and I refused. At that point, the tension was so high that the photographer refused to take photos until he sorted things out. The ceremony started late, and Emily was visibly upset throughout. After the wedding, she told me that I had ruined one of the most important days of her life and refused to speak to me for months. My parents and Mark tried to mediate, but Emily was adamant that I was in the wrong. I understand that I should have probably swallowed my discomfort and worn the dress, but I genuinely felt humiliated and trapped. It wasn't just about vanity. I couldn't enjoy the day knowing I was uncomfortable in front of everyone. On the other hand, I do feel guilty about how much stress I caused Emily on her big day. Her friends have told me I wasn't entirely in the wrong for wanting to feel comfortable, but Emily's family thinks I was selfish and dramatic. It's been a year, and our relationship is still strained. Emily occasionally talks to me, but there's a clear tension whenever we are in the same room. I'm not looking to go back in time and change the wedding, but I do want to know if I really was in the wrong. I genuinely tried to compromise, and the adjustment seemed minor, but it turned into a huge disaster. So, Reddit, AITA for making minor alterations to my sister's wedding dress because I felt uncomfortable wearing it. AITA for refusing to help my sister after she purposely got herself into a situation she could have avoided. This all started about 6 months ago, but I feel like I need to give some context first. I, 28F, have a younger sister, Emily, 24F. We've always had a strained relationship, mostly because Emily tends to make extremely impulsive decisions and then expects everyone else to fix the consequences. Growing up, my parents were fairly indulgent, so she never really had to face real repercussions until she hit her mid-20s. I, on the other hand, have always tried to be the responsible one, working steadily, saving money, and generally planning ahead. I love my sister, but sometimes her behavior drives me crazy. About 6 months ago, Emily got a brilliant idea to move to another state on her own. She had been dating someone for just 3 months and decided that moving in together was the next logical step. She called me one afternoon, sounding ecstatic, saying she had already signed the lease and was moving in 2 weeks. I asked her how she planned to afford it, given that she had no stable job lined up and very little savings. Her response was basically, "I'll figure it out. I always do." I tried to explain that moving to a new state, paying rent, utilities, and other expenses without a job is risky, but she brushed me off, insisting that she needed me to just be excited for her. I felt uneasy but didn't want to ruin her excitement, so I just wished her luck. Fast forward 2 months, Emily's plan fell apart spectacularly. Her boyfriend turned out to be way less responsible than she had assumed, and they fought constantly over money. Her job hunt went nowhere because she hadn't been preparing properly and had no real references or work history in the new state. She ended up living off of credit cards and money she borrowed from friends, which she didn't pay back. Eventually, she called me in tears, saying she had no money, the lease was in her name, and she couldn't afford rent. She begged me to fly out and help her financially, or at least co-sign a loan so she could stay in the apartment. I was furious. I told her point blank that I would not give her money or co-sign a loan. I explained that she made these decisions on her own and needed to face the consequences. I offered to help her figure out a plan to move back home safely, like renting a room temporarily, applying for local jobs, and creating a budget. She screamed at me over the phone, calling me selfish and heartless. She said I was abandoning my own sister and that I was the reason she was going to be homeless. Her boyfriend, who was on the call, agreed with her and added that I was being cruel. A week later, she moved out of the apartment. After skipping several rent payments and leaving the landlord with a large balance she promised to pay but never did. She ended up crashing with a friend for a few weeks and then finally came back to my city, essentially broke and angry. She immediately demanded that I make it up to her by letting her move in with me until she got back on her feet. I told her no. I explained that I live in a small apartment, that I already pay all my bills and have financial responsibilities, and that I wasn't comfortable supporting her indefinitely. She got extremely upset, accused me of not loving her, and stormed out. Our parents are upset with me too, saying that I should be helping her because family comes first. Even some mutual friends have taken her side, saying I should support my sister no matter what. The thing is, I genuinely want to help her, but I don't want to enable her reckless behavior. Every time I've tried to set boundaries, she gets upset and guilt trips me. I've already offered advice, temporary suggestions for living arrangements, and help finding a job, but she refuses to take any of it. She keeps expecting me to just solve her problems, which I feel is unfair. I'm not made of money, and I don't think it's reasonable to bail someone out of a situation they created entirely on their own. My friends are divided. Some say I'm right to set boundaries, while others say I should help because family should come first. I feel like if I had given her money or let her move in, it would only reinforce her bad habits and teach her that she can act impulsively without facing consequences. I also worry that if I keep refusing, she'll cut me out of her life completely, which would break my heart because I really do care about her. But I also can't keep sacrificing my own stability for her mistakes. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to financially help my sister and refusing to let her move in after she put herself in a situation she could have avoided. AITA for refusing to let my stepdaughter dictate our family vacation after she threw a tantrum in front of everyone. I, 34M, have been married to Karen, 33F, for 6 years, and she has a daughter, Maya, 12F, from a previous relationship. I've tried to be a supportive stepdad and have generally had a good relationship with her, though she can be strong-willed. We also have a son together, Leo, 6M, who adores both his mom and his older stepsister. Our family decided to take a week-long vacation to the mountains last month. Karen and I agreed to plan it together, and we invited Maya's father to join us for a couple of days, thinking it would be fair to include him since he shares custody. We booked a cabin, arranged activities for kids and adults, and set a budget everyone was comfortable with. The first issue arose when Maya found out about the hiking itinerary. She refuses to walk more than a short distance, and she loudly announced at dinner that she wouldn't do any hiking and that the vacation was ruining her summer. We tried to reason with her, explaining that hiking was a big part of the plan and that there would be other activities she could enjoy. She refused to compromise, saying that if I can't get my way, I'm not coming at all. The next day, she tried to control what everyone ate. She refused meals we had prepped and demanded we go to a fast food restaurant 3 times in one day, even though we had limited time and money. When Karen tried to enforce the schedule, Maya threw a full-blown tantrum in the cabin, screaming, slamming doors, and calling me and her mom mean and selfish. Our son Leo was terrified and started crying, and even Karen looked stressed. I told Maya she needed to calm down and that vacations involve compromise. She shouted back that I never listen and that I don't care about her happiness. At this point, I tried to speak calmly, suggesting alternative activities she might enjoy, but she refused everything. Karen intervened, asking me to just let it go and saying I was making her miserable but I refused to give in to yelling and unreasonable demands. The situation escalated during a group hike. Maya refused to participate, hid behind trees, and accused me of forcing her to do something she hated. I asked her to either join us or stay in the cabin quietly. She started shouting, calling me a terrible stepdad, and saying she hates being part of this family. Other guests and even strangers noticed her behavior, which embarrassed both Karen and me. Karen and I tried talking later that night. She suggested that maybe I should apologize to Maya for being too strict and allow her to control parts of the vacation. I refused, telling her that giving into tantrums would teach Maya that misbehavior gets her what she wants, and that our vacation shouldn't revolve around a single person throwing fits. Karen got frustrated and accused me of being rigid and lacking empathy. The final straw was when Maya demanded we cancel a planned family activity, rafting, because she didn't want to get wet. I told her that if she chose not to participate, she could stay in the cabin, but that the activity was not going to be canceled. She screamed, ran to her room, and slammed the door so hard the walls shook. I could hear her crying for over an hour. Karen said I had ruined the day and accused me of being controlling. By the end of the trip, Maya barely spoke to me, and Karen was clearly upset with me. I felt like I had to enforce boundaries for everyone's safety and enjoyment. But now Karen is insisting I should have been more flexible and considered her feelings more. Meanwhile, I feel exhausted from constantly managing tantrums and trying to make compromises that aren't being reciprocated. Friends I've talked to are split. Some say I was right to maintain boundaries and that a 12-year-old cannot dictate the plans for a whole family. Others say I should have handled it more gently and allowed her to feel heard, even if it meant adjusting activities. I genuinely tried to compromise, but Maya refused every option, and I don't think rewarding a meltdown would have been appropriate. Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my stepdaughter dictate our family vacation after she threw multiple tantrums and tried to control everything, even though my wife says I was too harsh. AITA for refusing to let my sister stay with me indefinitely after she moved in temporarily and started changing the rules of my home. I, 32F, live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment in a fairly quiet part of the city. I work full-time from home as a marketing manager, and my life has a pretty strict routine that I rely on for both productivity and mental health. I'm close to my family, but I've always had a clear line when it comes to my personal space and boundaries. About a month ago, my younger sister, Megan, 28F, called me in a panic. She had just been evicted from her apartment because her landlord sold the building, and she said she had nowhere to go. She asked if she could stay with me for a few weeks while she figured things out. I was hesitant. I love my sister, but I work from home and my apartment isn't huge. Megan insisted it would be temporary and promised she'd follow my house rules. After some back and forth, I agreed, setting conditions. She would stay in the guest bedroom, contribute to groceries, help with chores, respect quiet hours, and actively look for a new place. Megan agreed. The first week was okay. She mostly stayed in the guest room, followed the rules, and was polite. But by the end of the first week, things started to change. Megan began leaving her belongings scattered in shared areas, using my kitchen for long cooking sessions without cleaning up afterward, and helping herself to groceries without asking. I reminded her politely of the rules, and she said she was just trying to feel comfortable and that it was hard to remember every little rule when I'm stressed. By the second week, it became clear that a few weeks was going to stretch. Megan started inviting friends over without asking, sometimes late at night. They were loud, left trash in the apartment, and at one point blocked access to my balcony with their belongings. My neighbors complained once, which added tension. I tried talking to Megan calmly, but she argued that she was stressed and needed space, and that I was overreacting. Around week 3, Megan began suggesting that she could stay indefinitely. She claimed she couldn't find an apartment quickly and said it was more convenient for her to stay with me. I explained that temporary meant temporary and that I had commitments and work responsibilities that couldn't accommodate a permanent roommate. She accused me of being selfish and unsympathetic, saying that family should be more understanding. I I tried compromise by helping her look for short-term rentals, sublets, and temporary housing options. She rejected every suggestion, claiming that they were too expensive or too far from work. Her behavior became increasingly entitled. She started rearranging furniture, leaving dishes in the sink for days, and using my office desk while I was working despite my repeated requests not to. She also began making comments about how I was too controlling and didn't want family to be comfortable, which added to my stress. Tension between us grew. I found myself dreading coming home, working from cafes just to get away, and losing focus on my job. Megan would leave passive-aggressive notes around the apartment, sometimes criticizing me for being rigid or unwelcoming. Daniel, my partner, who occasionally stayed over, tried to mediate. He suggested I relax a bit, but I explained that my mental health and productivity were suffering. By week 5, I told Megan she needed to find a new place within 2 weeks. I offered help with moving logistics and temporary housing, but she accused me of being heartless and cruel. She told Daniel that I was trying to push her out for no reason and started framing herself as a victim. Even after this conversation, she continued to leave items in shared spaces and occasionally challenged rules I had already enforced, like quiet hours and kitchen usage. Friends and family have weighed in. Some say I should just let her stay since she is nowhere else, while others support me in enforcing boundaries. I feel like I've been reasonable. I agreed to a temporary stay, communicated rules clearly, offered assistance for alternatives, and remained patient. But I cannot compromise my mental health, work, or home environment indefinitely for someone who refuses to respect boundaries. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister stay with me indefinitely after she moved in temporarily and started changing the rules of my home. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after what she did at my engagement party. So, this is going to be long, but I'll try to keep it coherent. I, 28F, have a younger sister, Emma, 25F, and we've always had a pretty complicated relationship. We were close as kids, but things got weird in our teens, mostly because Emma always wanted to be the center of attention. Over the years, it has gotten better on the surface, but old habits die hard. About 6 months ago, I got engaged to my partner, Mark, 30M, and I was over the moon. I've been dreaming about my wedding since I was a little girl, and I wanted my engagement party to be something really special. I planned it for a Saturday evening at a small event hall near our neighborhood, invited close friends and family, and even arranged for a string quartet, because music is a big deal to me. I had a chat with Emma a month before the party because I wanted to make sure she felt included, given her history of feeling overshadowed. I offered to let her pick a dress code or theme element if she wanted, but I also set clear boundaries. I didn't want the party to be about her. She seemed fine with it at the time. Fast forward to the day of the party. Everything was going smoothly. Guests were arriving, drinks were flowing, and people were enjoying themselves. And then Emma showed up. She was wearing a floor-length, bright red dress that she had altered so it sparkled under the lights. That wouldn't have been a problem by itself, but she started loudly commenting on every single thing I had done, from the table settings to the playlist. I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe she was just excited. Then it got worse. About an hour in, Emma got on the small stage we had for the string quartet. We had left it empty for a few announcements and speeches, and grabbed the microphone. She started giving a speech, but it wasn't congratulating me or Mark. Instead, it was a detailed critique of my choices, how the venue was mediocre, how my dress was safe, and how the food selection lacked imagination. She kept comparing everything to her own taste and her amazing parties, which made everyone awkwardly laugh or glance at me like they didn't know what to do. I was mortified. Mark tried to step in and politely ask her to stop, but she ignored him and continued talking. Then she started dancing on the stage with the string quartet playing in the background, completely hijacking the music. I had to pull her off the stage eventually, which caused a scene and left me crying in the bathroom for half an hour. The guests were trying to console me, But the mood of the party was completely ruined. After that, Emma left early, claiming that she had made her point and tried to help, which was infuriating. I didn't confront her immediately because I was trying to calm down and salvage the party, but later that evening, I texted her explaining that her behavior was unacceptable and that it crossed major boundaries. I told her I was extremely hurt and that if she couldn't respect my milestones, I didn't know how to trust her in the future. Emma's response was aggressive. She said I was overreacting and that I should have expected this, and that she was only helping me be more interesting. She ended the message with, "If you can't handle me being honest, maybe you shouldn't have a sister like me." I tried to have a calm phone call to explain why what she did was wrong, but she refused to talk, saying she was too busy preparing for her own wedding. Here's where it gets really tense. Emma is getting married next month, and she invited me to be part of her wedding party. I've been struggling with whether I should go. Part of me wants to maintain family peace and be there for the rest of my family, but the other part of me is still furious. After the engagement party incident, I don't feel safe or respected around her. I worry she might try to pull something similar or overshadow her wedding with drama. I told my parents how I felt, and they're pressuring me to go. They say it's her big day and that I need to put the past behind me and act like a mature adult. My partner, Mark, supports me in whatever decision I make and agrees that what Emma did was completely inappropriate. My friends also say that I should not feel obligated to put myself in a situation where I could get hurt again. I decided to send Emma a message explaining that I wouldn't be attending her wedding. I try to be polite, explaining that I'm still upset about what happened at my engagement party and that I need distance to feel comfortable. I offered to meet after her wedding to celebrate privately if she wanted, but I made it clear that attending in person was not possible for me emotionally. Her response was explosive. She accused me of ruining our sisterhood, being selfish, and trying to control her big day. She told our parents that I had betrayed the family, and now they are caught in the middle. My mom is hurt and crying that I'm choosing anger over family, and my dad is frustrated that we're having this conflict right before her wedding. I feel like I'm being reasonable. I've tried to set boundaries, and she has ignored them multiple times. I don't want to attend her wedding just because people say I should. I also don't want to start an argument during her ceremony or be in a situation where she might embarrass me again. On the other hand, I can see why my parents are upset, because skipping her wedding could cause a family divide, and it might look like I am punishing her publicly. I just don't see how I can attend without feeling anxious, angry, and disrespected. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to go to my sister's wedding after what she did at my engagement party. I know this story is long, but I wanted to give all the context because there are so many layers to our history and the recent incident. AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after she criticized my home and life choices. I, 32F, have always been the practical sibling in my family. I live a modest townhouse in a suburban area, drive a reliable but older car, and work in IT. My sister, Anna, 30F, on the other hand, has always had a flair for drama and the finer things in life. She's a lawyer, owns a modern loft downtown, and tends to spend way above her means to maintain a certain image. Despite our differences, we've had a decent relationship over the years, with the usual sibling ups and downs. The problem started when Anna got engaged 6 months ago. From the beginning, she made it clear she wanted her wedding to be the event of the decade, and dropped hints about needing a big, luxurious venue. My parents suggested she consider renting a banquet hall or a hotel ballroom, which she dismissed immediately. Then she started talking about how cozy and charming my townhouse would be perfect for a small wedding. I wasn't thrilled about hosting a wedding at my home. My townhouse isn't huge, and I have a relatively small backyard, but I was willing to help in other ways like organizing a guest list or helping with invitations. One evening, she came over unannounced with a wedding planner she hired. She walked through my living room and immediately started criticizing everything. She said my couch was ugly, my kitchen appliances were ancient, and my decorations were stagnant and depressing. She laughed when she saw my living room bookshelf, calling it the sad corner of someone who gave up on life. I tried to brush it off, but the planner looked uncomfortable, and I could feel my face heating up. I told her that while my home isn't a showroom, it's cozy and comfortable for me, and that I wouldn't feel good having 100-plus people crammed into my space. She rolled her eyes and said I was being ridiculously stubborn and so passive-aggressive for not wanting to be the perfect host. Over the next couple of weeks, things escalated. She started sending me inspirational photos of her dream wedding, all at places that cost tens of thousands of dollars, and suggested I should upgrade my kitchen and furniture to make my home suitable for her wedding. She even hinted that if I didn't host it at my house, she'd have to downgrade and possibly have a less impressive wedding. I got increasingly uncomfortable and started setting boundaries, but every time I did, she'd guilt-trip me, saying she never asks for much and that family should make sacrifices for each other. The breaking point came a month ago. I told her I couldn't host her wedding at my house and offered to help find a venue instead. She responded by posting a long message in our family group chat, saying, "I can't believe my name would be so selfish. I thought family meant supporting each other, but apparently I'm expected to host my dream wedding in a house that looks like a sad sitcom. I guess comfort is more important than love and celebration." This blew up with our extended family. My parents and some cousins sided with her, saying I should just compromise and put her happiness first. Others privately messaged me, saying I was right to set boundaries and that Anna was being unreasonable. I tried explaining that hosting a wedding for 80-plus people in my small townhouse isn't just inconvenient. It's literally impossible without major renovations I can't afford. I also mentioned that I don't appreciate being criticized for my life choices every time she wants something from me. But every message I sent was twisted as being dramatic or controlling. Things got even worse when she started implying publicly that my refusal was a personal attack and that I don't love her enough to celebrate her special day. She's been posting about her wedding on social media with captions like, "Some people care more about their IKEA furniture than family," tagging me indirectly. I haven't responded publicly, but privately she keeps sending long messages guilt-tripping me and saying she won't forgive me if I don't change my mind. I've thought a lot about whether I'm overreacting. I know hosting a wedding is a big deal, but I feel like my sister crossed a line by insulting my home and trying to manipulate me. I also can't help but feel that if I gave in now, it would set a precedent for her to demand similar things in the future, and I'd never be able to relax in my own space again. I've offered to help in every other way, financially contributing to a venue, helping plan decorations, or even assisting with catering, but she won't accept anything except hosting at my home. My parents are frustrated with me, and some relatives have suggested I grow up and put family first. I feel torn, but at the same time, I can't see myself compromising my home and my boundaries for a wedding, no matter how much my sister wants it. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding at my house after she repeatedly criticized my home and tried to guilt me into it. AITA for refusing to lend my friend a large sum of money after she insulted my life choices. I, 32F, have a friend, Tara, 31F, who I've known since college. Over the years, we've been very close, but our lifestyles have always been different. I work in a steady corporate job, live modestly, and prioritize saving and long-term stability. Tara, on the other hand, has always been more impulsive, often spending beyond her means, and she frequently switches jobs. I've accepted this because we've always had fun together, and I never judge her personal choices. About a month ago, Tara asked me for a substantial favor. She wanted to borrow $15,000 to cover some unexpected expenses. She explained that her car broke down, her rent was late, and she had medical bills. Initially, I felt torn. I wanted to help my friend, but $15,000 is a huge amount, and I have responsibilities like my mortgage, retirement, and my younger brother's college tuition that I am contributing to. I asked if she could make a payment plan or if she had other resources to tap into, like family or a loan. She got visibly upset and said I was being selfish and unsupportive. The situation escalated when Tara reminded me of my life choices. She said, "You're always so careful with money, but you're miserable. You don't travel, you don't take risks, and you're basically a robot." I thought friends were supposed to help each other out. That stung because I've made conscious decisions to prioritize stability, and I work hard to manage my responsibilities. I felt like she was attacking my values instead of just asking for help. After thinking it over, I told Tara I could not lend her $15,000. I explained that it wasn't personal, but I couldn't risk my financial security. I offered to help in smaller, practical ways, like driving her to appointments, helping her negotiate payment plans with creditors, or even helping her create a budget to get through this rough patch. She immediately rejected all of it, saying, "That's not helpful at all. You just don't care about your friends." She then started involving mutual friends, sending texts that suggested I was a terrible friend and that I abandoned someone in need. I began to feel pressure from multiple directions, but I still held firm because giving her that amount would have jeopardized my own financial obligations. 2 weeks later, we ran into each other at a social event. Tara made a scene, loudly asking me in front of others why I refused to help someone who's struggling and insinuating that I wouldn't do anything meaningful in my life because I only care about money. People were uncomfortable, and I felt humiliated. I told her calmly that I cared deeply about her as a friend, but that I had boundaries and responsibilities I couldn't ignore. She stormed off, declaring that I was never a true friend and that she regretted ever knowing me. Since then, our mutual friends have been divided. Some think I was right to set financial boundaries and not put myself at risk. Others believe that friendship should mean helping when a friend is in crisis, especially after she insulted my choices. They argue I could have at least lent her part of the money. I've been called cold and unsympathetic, which bothers me because I genuinely offered practical help without risking myself. I also feel hurt because the insults about my lifestyle choices feel personal and unrelated to her immediate need. She framed my refusal to lend money as evidence that I don't care about her, but I've tried to help in other ways. It's frustrating because it seems like she expects me to compromise my values to satisfy her demands, which I don't think is fair. My partner, Sam, says I did the right thing and that true friendship doesn't mean risking financial ruin. He also thinks Tara's reaction crossed a line by publicly shaming me. Karen, my sister, disagrees and says I could have at least made a smaller loan to show support. I feel stuck because I want to maintain the friendship, but not at the expense of my security or self-respect. Reddit, AITA for refusing to lend my friend $15,000 after she insulted my lifestyle choices and publicly shamed me. Even though she says I'm being selfish and unsupportive, AITA for telling my brother-in-law that his fiance's parenting is harming his kids. I, 34F, have been married to my husband, Mark, 36M, for 8 years. We have 2 kids, ages 6 and 4. Mark has an older brother, Tom, 38M, who has 2 children, 7 and 5, from his previous marriage. Tom recently got engaged to a woman named Rachel, 32F, and while they've been dating for a little over a year, things have been moving very fast. I generally get along with Rachel, but over the past few months, I've been growing increasingly concerned about her parenting style and how it affects Tom's kids. To give some context, Tom's ex-wife, Lisa, is a very structured parent. She has routines, limits screen time, and generally enforces rules consistently. Tom and Lisa share custody, and while Tom has primary custody, he still tries to coordinate with Lisa. Rachel, on the other hand, seems to have no concept of boundaries, rules, or consequences. She often lets the kids eat sugary snacks for breakfast, stay up late, and skip schoolwork or chores. She also tends to give the kids whatever they want in the moment, saying things like, "They're just kids, let them be happy." It started subtly. During family gatherings, I noticed the kids were often overly tired, misbehaving, or tantruming, and Rachel would shrug it off. She would make excuses for them or laugh off bad behavior instead of addressing it. Mark and I tried to stay out of it because we didn't want to create tension, but it started affecting our own children when they were around. My kids, who were used to structure and consistency, became confused, frustrated, and even started acting out. About 2 months ago, we went on a weekend trip together. From the moment we arrived, I noticed that Rachel was ignoring the kids' bedtime entirely. She let them run around the hotel lobby at 11 p.m., eat ice cream, and watch movies. My kids were exhausted, and I had to intervene repeatedly to maintain some semblance of order. Mark noticed it too, but he didn't say much because he didn't want to start a confrontation in front of everyone. The breaking point came during a Saturday morning breakfast. Rachel allowed the kids to take over the buffet line and grab as much sugary cereal, pastries, and chocolate as they wanted. When one of the kids spilled juice on the floor, she laughed and said it was just juice instead of cleaning it up or teaching them to be careful. My 6-year-old noticed the chaos and said, "Mommy, why can't kids have rules like at home?" I tried to brush it off, but I couldn't ignore it anymore. After breakfast, I pulled Tom aside and said something along the lines of, "Tom, I don't mean to interfere, but I think Rachel's approach to parenting is really harming the kids. They're not used to this chaos, and it's affecting them emotionally and behaviorally." Tom got defensive immediately, saying that I was overreacting and that his kids were happy and free-spirited. I tried to explain that happiness is not the same as neglecting structure or boundaries, but he wouldn't listen. He accused me of trying to control his family and undermining his relationship. I felt frustrated because I genuinely wasn't trying to attack Rachel or Tom. I just care about the kids and wanted him to see the potential long-term consequences. After that conversation, I thought maybe I overstepped, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I did the right thing. A few weeks later, Rachel found out what I said through Tom, and she confronted me. She said that I was meddling and judging her parenting, and that if I couldn't accept her choices, I shouldn't involve myself in her family. She also made some comments about me being a controlling parent myself, which stung because I try to be balanced and consistent without being rigid. The situation has now escalated. Family gatherings have become tense, and Tom barely talks to me anymore. My husband is upset with me too, saying that I should have minded my own business. On the other hand, I still believe the kids are being negatively affected by Rachel's parenting and that someone needed to say something before it got worse. I'm conflicted because I don't want to cause a permanent rift, but I also don't want to ignore what I see as harmful behavior. So, AITA for telling my brother-in-law that his fiancé's parenting is harming his kids? The story is around 6,500 characters, which fits your requested range. If you want, I can write a second version that's slightly longer, with more dramatic tension and detailed family dynamics. To hit closer to 7,000 characters, it would feel even more like a viral Reddit AITA post. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to let my friend stay in my apartment after she said it would be temporary, and then started acting like she owned the place? I, 30F, live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment in a mid-sized city. I work from home as a content strategist and have a pretty strict routine because I need a quiet environment to be productive. I also value my personal space a lot and tend to get stressed if that space is disrupted. About a month ago, my friend Clara, 29F, reached out. She had just been evicted from her apartment because her landlord sold the building, and she asked if she could stay with me for a few weeks until she found something new. Clara and I have been friends for over 10 years, and I care about her, but I was hesitant. My apartment is small, and I knew my routines would be disrupted. Clara assured me it would be temporary, she'd follow my house rules, and she'd actively look for a new place. After some thought, I agreed, but set clear conditions. She would stay in the guest bedroom, contribute to groceries, help with cleaning, respect quiet hours, and actively search for a new place. Clara agreed and moved in the next day. The first week went smoothly. Clara stayed in her room, mostly followed the rules, and was polite. But by the end of the first week, I noticed small problems. She left dirty dishes in the sink, used my kitchen for long cooking sessions without cleaning, and helped herself to groceries without asking. I reminded her about the rules, and she apologized, saying she just wanted to feel comfortable. By the second week, it became clear that a few weeks might stretch. Clara started inviting friends over, sometimes several at a time, without asking me. They were loud, stayed late, and left trash around the apartment. One night, I had an early work meeting and needed quiet, but Clara and her friend were being loud in the living room. I asked her to keep it down, and she snapped at me, saying I was being unreasonable. Around week 3, Clara began implying she could stay indefinitely. She said she hadn't found a new place yet, and suggested that since she was family-like to me, it was obvious she should stay. I told her again that temporary meant temporary, and I had a life, a job, and routines that couldn't accommodate a permanent roommate. She accused me of being selfish and said I wasn't being a good friend. To try to compromise, I offered to help her look for short-term rentals, sublets, and other options. She refused everything, claiming it was too expensive, too far, or too much hassle. Meanwhile, her behavior became more intrusive. She left her belongings in shared spaces, rearranged furniture without asking, and started using my office desk while I was working. She also began leaving passive-aggressive notes around the apartment about me being cold and unwelcoming. The tension in the apartment became unbearable. I started working from cafes to avoid the stress. My productivity suffered, and I constantly felt anxious at home. Clara would comment on my routines, criticize the way I cooked or cleaned, and make comments like, "I guess I'm not allowed to be comfortable here," whenever I asked her to follow a rule. Daniel, my boyfriend, who occasionally stayed over, suggested I relax a bit, but I explained that my mental health was at stake. By week 5, I had reached my limit. I told Clara she needed to find a new place within 2 weeks. I offered help with moving logistics and temporary housing, but she reacted angrily. She accused me of being heartless, said I was trying to push her out for no reason, and started framing herself as a victim to mutual friends. She also left more notes around the apartment, some passive-aggressive, some just critical of me personally. Even after our conversation, she continued testing boundaries, occasionally ignoring quiet hours and leaving dishes in the sink. Friends and family have weighed in. Some say I should just let her stay because she has nowhere else, while others support me for enforcing boundaries. I feel like I've been more than fair. I agreed to a temporary stay, communicated rules clearly, offered alternatives, and remained patient for over a month. But I cannot compromise my mental health, my work, or my home for someone who refuses to respect agreed-upon boundaries. So, AITA for refusing to let my friend stay in my apartment indefinitely after she said it would be temporary and then started acting like she owned the place. AITA for refusing to give my brother-in-law the car I inherited from my late father. I, 28F, have been grappling with this situation for months now, and I honestly can't tell if I'm in the wrong. I recently inherited my dad's old car after he passed away unexpectedly. It's a classic, a 1968 Mustang, and while it's not in pristine condition, it's the car he taught me to drive in and has enormous sentimental value to me. It's not about the money. I would never sell it because it reminds me of him every time I see it in the driveway. Now here's where the drama started. My brother-in-law, Sam, 30M, has been dealing with financial issues ever since he lost his job during the pandemic. He's currently driving a beat-up car that's on its last legs, and he's been complaining constantly about it. At our last family gathering, he casually brought up that he needed a reliable car and hinted that it would be really nice if I could help him out. I laughed nervously, thinking he was joking. He didn't laugh. Over the next few weeks, Sam's hints got more persistent. Texts like "that Mustang would look amazing in my driveway," or "imagine how much fun we could have restoring it together" started popping up. I ignored most of them, but eventually he came over one evening unannounced and parked in front of my house. He walked straight up to me with his casual "so, can I have it now?" attitude. I was stunned. I told him absolutely not, that the car belonged to me and that it wasn't for sale or trade. He shrugged and said, "Come on, it's just collecting dust. You never drive it anyway." I tried to explain how much it meant to me, but he kept pushing, saying that I could always buy another car and that I shouldn't be selfish. The next day, my husband, 29M, confronted me about it. He said I was being unreasonable and that I should consider Sam's situation. He argued that families should help each other out, and giving the car to Sam would be a nice gesture. I tried to explain that helping family doesn't mean giving away something that has deep sentimental value, but he seemed frustrated. He said I was letting a piece of metal come between us and accused me of being selfish. Things escalated when Sam started texting my friends, hinting that I was selfish and hoarding my dad's stuff. My social circle started asking me why I was refusing to give him the car, which made me feel judged and isolated. I didn't reach out to Sam to argue. I just blocked his number for a while because the constant pressure was making me anxious. A few days ago, during a family dinner, Sam brought up the car again in front of everyone. He said, "You know, if you loved your dad, you'd let me have it." He would have wanted it to be used, not sitting in a driveway. The room went silent. My husband looked at me with a mix of frustration and disappointment. I lost it and said that no one has the right to dictate what I do with something so personal. My mother-in-law chimed in, saying I was being heartless, and Sam smirked like he'd won some moral victory. Since that night, I've barely spoken to anyone in the family. My husband has been distant, my brother-in-law keeps making passive-aggressive comments, and my social media has been flooded with "I hope you reconsider" messages from extended family. I feel like I'm being painted as the villain for not giving up something that is not only mine, but also deeply tied to my memories of my dad. I've tried reasoning with my husband that giving Sam the car wouldn't fix his financial problems and wouldn't honor my father's memory. I offered to help him look for an affordable car or even co-sign a loan if needed, but Sam refuses to accept anything less than the Mustang. My husband says I need to think of the bigger picture and that my rigid stance is tearing the family apart. I'm torn. On one hand, I know Sam is struggling, and I understand that he sees this as a huge opportunity. On the other hand, this car is one of the few things left from my dad, and giving it away feels like betraying him and my own feelings. I never expected this inheritance to cause such a huge rift. I don't want to be the person who causes family drama, but I also don't want to give up something that's irreplaceable to me. The whole situation has left me feeling guilty, stressed, and isolated. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to give my brother-in-law the car I inherited from my late father. AITA for refusing to let my cousin stay with me after she said it would be temporary and then started acting like she owned my apartment. I, 33F, live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment in the city. I work from home as a software engineer, and I'm used to a very quiet, structured environment. I like my routines, my space, and generally living alone. I'm close to my family, but I've always had firm boundaries about my home. About a month ago, my cousin Emma, 30F, reached out to me in a panic. She had been evicted from her apartment because her landlord sold the building and asked if she could stay with me for a couple of weeks while she figured something out. Emma and I've always been close, but we've never lived together. I was hesitant because I work from home and my apartment isn't huge, but after some discussion, I agreed on a few conditions. She would stay in the guest bedroom, contribute to groceries, help with cleaning, respect quiet hours, and actively look for a new place. Emma agreed and moved in the next day. The first week was fine. She mostly stayed in her room, followed the rules, and helped with small chores. But by the end of the first week, I noticed small issues. She would leave dishes in the sink, use my kitchen for long cooking sessions without cleaning up properly, and occasionally help herself to my groceries without asking. I reminded her about the rules, and she apologized, saying she just wanted to feel at home. By the second week, things started to escalate. Emma began inviting friends over without asking, sometimes bringing 3 or 4 people at a time. They were loud, left trash in the living room, and at one point blocked access to my balcony with their belongings. My neighbors complained once, which stressed me out. I tried talking to her calmly, asking her to stick to the agreed rules, but she snapped at me, saying I was being overly strict and unfriendly. Around week 3, Emma suggested she might need to stay indefinitely. She claimed she couldn't find a place immediately and implied that since she was family, I should let her stay as long as necessary. I reminded her that temporary meant temporary and that my life, work, and routines couldn't accommodate a permanent roommate. She got defensive and accused me of being selfish, uncaring, and not understanding what it's like to be in a crisis. I tried to compromise by offering to help her find short-term rentals, sublets, or temporary housing. She rejected every option, claiming it was too expensive, too far, or too inconvenient. Her behavior became increasingly intrusive. She started leaving personal items in shared spaces, moved furniture around without asking, and occasionally used my office desk while I was working. She also left passive-aggressive notes around the apartment, criticizing me for being rigid and controlling. By the 4th week, I was miserable. My work was suffering, I was anxious at home, and the apartment felt chaotic. Emma would make snide comments like, I guess I'm not welcome here whenever I reminded her to follow a rule. Daniel, my partner, who occasionally stayed over, suggested I relax, but I explained that my mental health and work were being affected. Finally, after 5 weeks, I told Emma she needed to find a new place within 2 weeks. I offered assistance with moving logistics and temporary housing options. She reacted angrily, calling me heartless and saying I was abandoning family in a time of need. She even started framing Daniel as someone who agreed with my cruelty. Despite this, she continued leaving her belongings in shared spaces and testing boundaries, like ignoring quiet hours and leaving dishes unwashed. Friends and family have weighed in. Some argue I should let her stay because she has nowhere else, while others support my stance, saying I am completely justified for enforcing boundaries and protecting my mental health. I feel like I've been more than fair. I agreed to a temporary stay, clearly communicated rules, offered alternatives, and remained patient for over a month. But I cannot compromise my work, mental health, and home for someone who refuses to respect boundaries. So, AITA for refusing to let my cousin stay with me indefinitely after she said it would be temporary and then started overstepping boundaries. AITA for refusing to host my brother's wedding at my house after he insulted my parenting choices. I, 35F, have a 5-year-old son, Ethan, and I've been divorced from his father for about 6 years. My younger brother, Ryan, 32M, got engaged last year to Lisa, 30F. Ryan and I have always been close, and I've tried to maintain a healthy relationship with him even after my divorce. I've also been very protective of Ethan, making sure he's raised in a stable, respectful environment. Recently, Ryan asked if he and Lisa could host their wedding at my house. I live in a large but modest home with plenty of space, and I've hosted family events before, so it seemed like a reasonable request at first. However, I wanted to discuss details before committing, such as catering, cleanup, and whether they'd respect my rules about children being supervised during the event. The conversation quickly went sideways. Ryan insisted he wanted the wedding exactly as he imagined, and said he didn't want any interruptions, specifically mentioning Ethan. I explained that Ethan is a part of my household, and that I would not leave him unsupervised during a large gathering. Ryan scoffed and said, "You always let him run wild and cater to him too much. Can't you just control him for one day?" I was taken aback. Ethan is well-behaved most of the time, but he's a 5-year-old, and it's unreasonable to expect him to be completely silent or rigid during a wedding. I reminded Ryan that I have primary custody and that I would not ask him to take responsibility for Ethan's care. He argued that it would ruin the wedding experience for their guests. It escalated when Ryan began criticizing my parenting more generally. He said I overprotect Ethan and that I don't discipline him enough. He even brought up small incidents from the past, like Ethan accidentally spilling juice on a rug, as evidence that I'm too soft. I tried to explain that I discipline in a structured way and that Ethan knows boundaries, but he wasn't listening. Ryan then said, "If you can't control your kid for one day, maybe you're not mature enough to host a wedding here. Maybe you should just stay home." That hurt because hosting a wedding isn't just about space, it's about trust, and he was openly questioning my capability as a parent and as a host. At that point, I told him that if he wanted the wedding at my house, it would have to be on my terms, including supervision of Ethan and clear limits on what was acceptable behavior for all children present. Ryan's reaction was immediate and hostile. He accused me of throwing a tantrum over nothing and trying to ruin their big day. Lisa joined in, saying I was being selfish and controlling. I stayed calm and reiterated that hosting a wedding in someone else's home is a privilege, not a right, and that I could not compromise on my son's safety or well-being. After that conversation, I decided it was simpler to tell them they needed to find another venue. I suggested local banquet halls and parks, and even offered to help with planning in other ways, like crafting invitations or helping coordinate vendors. Ryan took it as a personal attack. He told my parents I was unreasonable and that I hate him and Lisa. I later found out he sent group texts to family members, complaining about how I always make everything about my kid and never support him. The fallout has been rough. My parents are divided. They understand my perspective, but also feel guilty because Ryan is upset. Some extended family members have hinted that I'm overreacting and that I shouldn't let a little critique stop me from helping my brother. I feel frustrated because it wasn't about controlling the wedding or being difficult. It was about protecting my child and setting reasonable boundaries. I still care about Ryan and Lisa, but I refuse to host the wedding under circumstances that make me uncomfortable and put my son in a stressful position. I feel like their reaction, insulting my parenting and publicly shaming me, cross a line. At the same time, I feel guilty because I know weddings are emotional, and now my family is divided. Reddit, AITA for refusing to host my brother's wedding at my house after he insulted my parenting choices and insisted I control my 5-year-old for their big day, even though I offered alternative ways to help. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.